My son said I was too old to travel, and then he and his family flew first class using my money. I wake early, always have. The kettle clicks on just before 6, and by the time steam curls into the quiet kitchen, I've already folded yesterday's laundry and placed a bowl of oats on the table. There's comfort in these rituals, small, unspoken reassurances that the day will unfold gently. My name is Evelyn Harper. I'm 75, and I live alone now, in a modest clapboard house on the edge of a quiet Vermont town. 2 winters have passed since Harold died. The house no longer creaks with his weight, but it holds his warmth, especially in the mornings. Outside, the hydrangeas are starting to brown. I trim them anyway. Habit, mostly. 3 times a week I volunteer at the senior center, reading, sorting pantry shelves, wiping down the chessboards after the men leave their half-finished games. The days pass slowly, but not unhappily. There is peace in knowing what to expect. Mike, my son, lives in Boston with his wife Jenna and their little girl, Skylar. I used to visit more often. Used to get Sunday calls. These days, it's mostly texts, short ones, sometimes just emojis. A thumbs up. A heart. Once, a dancing penguin I couldn't understand. When I call, the phone rings too long. And when it's answered, the voices are brisk. Things are just busy, Mom. I've heard that a lot lately. Jenna's work is demanding, Skylar's got gymnastics, Mike's always in meetings. It's not personal, I tell myself. It's just life. But even the invitations I extend now go unanswered. I asked them to visit last month for the foliage, said I'd make Skylar's favorite soup. Mike replied 3 days later, sounds nice. Not sure yet. Let me check with Jenna. He never followed up. Sometimes I catch myself lingering near the phone, listening for it. Other times, I deliberately leave it in another room, to prove to myself I don't care. But I do. There's a chill lately. Not in the air, that's expected in October, but in the tone. The replies. The pauses. Still, I make their beds when I change the sheets. Just in case. It's fine, I tell myself. Things just shifted a little. But I feel the undercurrent. And it whispers, you're not needed anymore. It was a February morning when Mike called. My hands were wet from washing up the breakfast dishes, and I nearly missed the ring. His voice came through the receiver bright, cheerful, too cheerful. Mom, we've got an idea. For your 75th, we're taking a family trip. You deserve a getaway, sun, breeze, the whole deal. I paused, drying my hands slowly on the hem of my apron. A trip? Yes. A cruise. Warm weather, no fuss, just family time. Jenna thought of it, actually. That surprised me. Jenna was rarely the one to include me in anything. But I smiled anyway. That's very kind. You haven't traveled in ages, right? This will be perfect. I said yes, of course. What else was I supposed to say? I'd been feeling the silence around here a little too loudly lately. The thought of laughter, of being among them again, was enough to make me forget the heaviness in my chest. I imagined Skylar with her sun hat, Mike with a drink in hand, Jenna in sunglasses, and me, just behind them, finally a part of something again. A week passed. Then 2. Then the second call came. I was in the living room, refolding the blanket on the back of the couch even though it hadn't been touched. Hey Mom, Mike said. So, about the cruise. Flights are getting expensive. I was wondering, can I use your card to hold the reservation? Just to lock in the rate. I'll handle the rest. I hesitated. It's just for the hold, he added quickly. I'll take care of it once I move some things around. I gave him the number. I didn't ask questions. I trusted him. I told myself it was natural. He was busy. I'd always helped where I could. Always made things easier. That was what mothers did. But the next week, the tone shifted again. His voice softened, almost too soft. Gentle in that rehearsed way people use when trying to talk someone out of something. You know, Mom, he said, we've been thinking. Cruises are a lot. Crowds, long flights, unpredictable weather. You get tired easy these days. Maybe it's not the best fit for you. I didn't say anything at first. Just stared out the window at the empty bird feeder swinging in the wind. You'd be more comfortable staying home, right? He added, like he was solving a problem. I forced a smile into my voice. If that's what you think is best. It's not about excluding you, he said. We just want you to rest. It's your birthday, after all. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. Later that evening, I stood in the hallway looking at my packed overnight bag. I'd started gathering things in anticipation, a sun hat, a paperback, a new pair of sandals I found on sale. I slowly placed each item back where it belonged. They hadn't asked me. They hadn't wondered if I wanted to go. They had simply decided I was too old, too slow, too much. It wasn't the trip. It was how they'd spoken about me. As though I were a chore. As though including me was a favor. I didn't say anything. I didn't call back. I told myself it didn't matter. But every morning after that, I caught myself checking my bank app. Watching for charges. And sure enough, they came, first the airfare, then the cruise itself. Nothing was paid back. I made excuses for weeks. Told myself Mike must have forgotten. That they'd square it away soon. But somewhere inside me, something began to settle. Not anger, just understanding. I had become a formality. A pleasant memory they weren't sure how to put away. And suddenly, their kindnesses, when they came, felt like performance. On Sundays, I still made soup. Still set 2 extra places at the table. Still folded Skylar's old sweatshirt that she left behind last summer. But the air was different now. Not sharp. Just thinner. As though the love we'd once shared had been stretched too far, and now there was only thread. No fabric. Just a delicate, unraveling thread. I didn't confront anyone. That wasn't my way. Instead, I watched. Watched as they slowly redrew the circle, and placed me just outside it. My birthday fell on a Tuesday that year. February still clung to the edges of snow, though the sun had made a rare appearance that morning. I woke early, as always. Washed my face. Steeped the good jasmine tea I keep for special mornings. And then, like I used to when Harold was alive, I cooked. I roasted salmon with dill, sliced lemon for the pie, pulled out the tablecloth with the embroidered hem. Skylar always liked that one, said it looked like lace from a fairy tale. I set the table for 4. Just in case. At 6:30, I changed into my blue blouse and a pearl pin, the one Mike gave me years ago for Mother's Day. It still catches the light, even now. By 7, I had lit the candle and poured water into glasses. 7:15. Silence. I sat down and waited. By 8, I turned the salmon to low. My back ached slightly from standing. I didn't mind. At 9, I blew out the candle. I didn't cry. That part of me had quieted long ago. But something heavier pressed on my chest. A kind of stillness that didn't feel like peace. The next morning, I opened the door to retrieve the paper and found Lizzie, my neighbor downstairs, smiling up at me, holding a bouquet of grocery store flowers, sunflowers, and tulips mixed together. Happy birthday, Evelyn. I saw your son's post. Skylar looked so happy in that video, what a yacht. I didn't know your family was in the West Indies. I stood there, frozen, a polite smile tightening across my face. Oh, I said softly. Neither did I. She didn't notice. She was already skipping back down the stairs, chatting on her phone. I closed the door and walked to the kitchen, slowly. The salmon was still in the fridge. Untouched. I sat down and opened Instagram. There they were. Mike. Jenna. Skylar. Matching shirts, windblown smiles. Laughing. Caption, family reset sun with face no drama, just sunshine. Skylar's story showed her twirling on a boat deck, her hair braided with beads. Another clip showed Mike sipping something from a glass with a paper umbrella, Jenna posing beside a buffet of tropical fruit. I clicked to Jenna's profile. A photo of their suite. White robes, breakfast trays, a caption that read, deserved every bit of this. Family first. Family. I opened my email. Searched my inbox. The flight confirmations were there. Cruise booking. Airport car service. Spa reservations. All of it charged to my card. First class airfare. Luxury suite. They had used me to pay for a vacation they didn't want me on. Not even a call. Not even a message. Just absence. And the assumption that I would never know. I stared at the screen, not blinking. I thought of the bag I had packed. The sandals I had put away again. The pie still cooling in the fridge. I rose and walked to the sink. The glasses I'd set out were still on the table. I picked one up slowly, rinsed it beneath warm water, set it on the drying rack. Then the next. And the next. There were only 3. They hadn't even planned to come. They hadn't even intended to pretend. Later that night, I sat in my chair near the window. A soft snow had begun to fall. The street light outside glowed orange against the white. I held the old photo album in my lap. The one with Mike's baby pictures. His first Halloween. His graduation. The photo of him in the delivery room, holding Skylar like she was made of glass. I turned the pages slowly. It wasn't rage I felt. Not even sadness. It was something older. Something settled. A knowing. I had raised a son who knew how to smile while taking. And I had let him. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat there in the quiet, one hand resting on the photo album, the other holding my untouched cup of tea. And for the first time, I began to imagine a life where I stopped waiting at the table. I didn't call him. Not after the birthday. Not after the yacht, the photos, the receipts. I didn't ask for an explanation. I didn't demand apologies. There are silences that come from pain, and there are silences that come from understanding. This was the second kind. 2 days later, I went to the senior center like usual. I brought lemon cookies for the tea table. No one asked about my birthday, and I didn't mention it. I handed out plates, poured tea, straightened a few chairs. I smiled when someone told a joke I didn't quite hear. And when Martha sat beside me and asked how I was doing, I answered, "I'm just fine," and folded my napkin 3 times. She looked at me carefully. Martha had lost her husband 10 years ago, had gone through something similar with her eldest. She didn't press. Just nodded. Later that week, she slipped me a name. Susan Foster. Retired judge. Helps women like us. Doesn't charge a dime. I took the card. I didn't plan to use it. But that Sunday, I opened my banking app again. There were more charges. Jewelry. Spa services. An e-bike. All booked from Boston. All on my card. I stared at the screen until the number stopped meaning anything. Just shapes. Just proof. I called Susan on Monday. Her voice was low, even. Measured. She asked me what had happened, and I told her, not everything, just enough. "I'd like to review your accounts," she said gently. "If that's all right." We met at the library the next day. Neutral ground. I brought a folder with my account logins, the printouts I'd gathered, the emails. Susan flipped through them methodically. "You didn't authorize these?" I shook my head. I couldn't quite get the words out. She didn't judge me. Just nodded and pulled out a notepad. "We'll start with your bank. Get access revoked. Then we'll look at your will. My will? Yes, she said. I assume they're named? I nodded again. Then we'll rewrite it. It happened quietly. We visited the bank together. The manager there, soft-spoken, polite, helped freeze all linked cards, removed secondary users, set up new logins. I signed a new power of attorney. Named no one. Then we went to Susan's office, and she drafted a fresh will. No fanfare. No anger. I didn't cut them out completely. I just shifted the weight. A small scholarship fund in Harold's name. A bequest to the local library. A portion to Shelter Grace, a non-profit Susan volunteers with. They help women leave quietly. Begin again. It felt right. Afterwards, I walked home alone. The air had that late winter bite, just sharp enough to remind you it wasn't quite spring. I made myself tea. The good kind. Took out the lemon pie that no one had eaten, and sliced a piece just for me. I sat at the kitchen table, fork in hand, and listened to the quiet. For the first time in a long while, it didn't feel empty. It felt like space. Space I had made by choosing myself. He came on a Tuesday. No warning. I saw his car through the window as I was trimming the dead leaves from the jade plant. Mike hadn't set foot in my house in over 6 months. Not since Skylar's birthday. Not since they'd decided I was too tired to travel. I opened the door before he knocked. "Hey, Mom," he said, smiling like he used to in high school when he needed something. "You look good." I stepped aside. He walked in like nothing had happened. Took off his shoes, made a comment about how the place still smelled like lemon and soap. We sat at the table, the same one I had sat on my birthday. He didn't mention it. "I've been thinking," he started, leaning forward. "I found a property outside Worcester. Needs work, but I could flip it. It's a good investment." I nodded, waiting. I'd need around 40 grand to get the down payment and the initial renovations going. Nothing crazy. We could treat it as an advance, on the inheritance. You know, just so I don't miss the opportunity. I looked at him carefully. There was no shame in his voice. No hesitation. Just a kind of casual confidence, as if he assumed I'd say yes. As if I'd been waiting to be useful again. I reached for my teacup, warm in my hands. "There's nothing left for you, Mike." He blinked. "What do you mean?" "I've closed all shared accounts. Changed the will." His mouth opened slightly. Confused, not hurt. "You're joking." I shook my head. He leaned back in the chair, scoffing. "So what, you're just gonna sit here all alone with your money?" I didn't answer right away. I just took a sip of tea. "It's better," I said finally, "than being surrounded by people who see me as a bank account." There was a silence after that. Not tense. Just still. He stood up. Pushed his chair in too hard. His voice was quieter now. "You don't mean this." But I did. He didn't say goodbye. Just left, letting the door click shut behind him. I didn't watch him drive away. Instead, I sat at the table and looked at the jade plant, its leaves green and plump under the kitchen light. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad. Just lighter. Later that evening, I opened the drawer where I kept old photographs. I pulled out one of Harold, the one from the year we bought this house. He's smiling at me, holding a paintbrush, standing in front of the half-finished porch railing. He would have understood. He always said there was a difference between helping and being used. That night, I slept without waking once. No dreams. No wait. Just breath. And when morning came, I didn't reach for my phone. I made tea. Fed the birds. Sat at the window with the paper. The world was the same. But I wasn't. March passed quietly. So did April. The air softened, and the light stayed a little longer on the porch steps in the evenings. I found myself sitting out there more often, sometimes with a book, sometimes with nothing at all. I started going to Shelter Grace twice a week. It wasn't far, just across town in a converted church with peeling white paint and a bell that hadn't rung in years. Susan introduced me to the director, a calm woman named Marianne who wore soft wool sweaters and always smelled faintly of lavender. They didn't ask questions. They just welcomed me in. I read to women in the common room, women with soft eyes and stories etched into their postures. Some had been hurt in ways I couldn't speak of. Others just looked tired. Like me. I brought them soup sometimes. Or the lemon pie. One of them, a young woman named Cassie, said it reminded her of her grandmother. She asked for the recipe, and I wrote it out carefully by hand. There, I wasn't someone's obligation. I wasn't too old or just resting. I was just Evelyn. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. I cleaned out the guest room one morning. Not because I expected anyone, but because it felt right. I boxed up old toys Skylar had outgrown. Folded the quilts I had stitched years ago. Labeled everything carefully and donated most of it to the shelter. The room looked smaller once it was empty. But also calmer. I hung a new curtain. Washed the windows. I slept better that night. By the time June arrived, I was moving differently. Slower, still, but not heavy. My steps felt more like mine again. For my 76th birthday, I booked the small room at the community center. Nothing elaborate. Just folding chairs, a long table for food, soft jazz playing through someone's old speaker. I invited only the people who had stayed. Susan came, of course. Lizzie brought her boyfriend, who helped carry the pie tray. Marianne brought 2 women from Shelter Grace, and Cassie came too, holding a paper-wrapped bouquet of daffodils. I wore a green sweater. Not because it was new, but because it was mine. I hadn't bought anything for the occasion. I didn't need to. We sat. We ate. We laughed. Someone asked what the secret was to my pie crust, and I just smiled. Cold butter, I said. And quiet hands. No one asked about Mike. No one mentioned Boston, or cruises, or Skylar. And I didn't offer. Afterward, as the room emptied and chairs scraped gently across the floor, I sat alone for a moment with the last slice of pie. It was enough. Not a performance. Just presence. The next day, I brought the leftover flowers home and placed them in the old vase Harold had given me. The one with the small chip on the rim. I set them on the windowsill and opened the window just an inch. The breeze was soft. It smelled like earth. I poured myself tea and sat by the window with a blanket. Outside, 2 birds danced across the lawn. And inside, for the first time in years, I felt the kind of stillness that didn't ache. It was early autumn when she appeared again. The trees had just started to turn, their edges blushing gold and rust, and I was bringing in the last of the basil from the garden. The doorbell rang while I was rinsing the leaves. I didn't rush. People don't ring my bell much these days. When I opened the door, Skylar stood there. She wasn't dressed for show. No designer coat, no mascara. Just jeans and a soft hoodie that looked a size too large, sleeves tugged over her hands like she used to do as a little girl. She held a folded card. "Hi, Grandma." Her voice was smaller than I remembered. Or maybe it was just quieter. "Hi," I said. She looked down. "I'm sorry I didn't call. I wasn't sure if I should come. Or if you'd want me to." I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, her eyes scanning the room like it was familiar but changed. She looked at the photo of Harold still on the mantel. At the quilt folded neatly over the armchair. At the jade plant in its ceramic pot. She sat at the kitchen table without asking. "I saw the receipts," she said after a pause. "Dad left his laptop open. I didn't mean to snoop, but I saw it all. Flights. Charges. The cruise. It was all in your name." I sat across from her. I didn't say anything. I asked him about it, she went on, and he said you didn't want to come. That you said it was too much. I watched her face carefully. I believed him, she whispered. And I didn't question it. I just went and had fun. She placed the card on the table and slid it forward. Happy birthday, she said. I know I'm late. I looked at the envelope. Her handwriting hadn't changed since she was 12. A little lopsided, a little soft. It hurt, baby, I said, my voice low. Yes, it did. She blinked hard. I know. We sat in silence for a while. The ticking of the clock above the stove was the only sound in the room. Finally, she asked, am I allowed to stay? I looked at her. She wasn't the same child who used to climb into my lap with storybooks. She wasn't the girl who painted seashells with me one summer. She had grown into someone who could choose. She had chosen not to ask, not to wonder. Until now. I stood, walked to the counter, and cut a slice of lemon pie from the one I'd made the day before. Placed it on a plate. Set it in front of her. Grab some before Susan finishes it all, I said. She smiled faintly. Tucked her hands into her sleeves. We didn't hug. I didn't tell her it was okay. But I didn't close the door either. Later, as she left, she paused at the threshold. I want to come back, she said. If that's all right. I nodded. The door closed gently behind her. And I stood in the hallway, the card still unopened in my hand. I didn't need her apology to feel whole. I had already chosen peace. But I had also chosen not to shut every door. Some stay closed forever. Others, you leave slightly ajar, just enough for someone to knock again. Time moves differently when you stop waiting for it. The year after that birthday passed in small, unremarkable ways. I took to writing letters again, real ones, with stamps and soft-lined paper. I sent one to an old friend in Oregon, another to my cousin in Maine. Most went unanswered, but that didn't matter. The act itself felt grounding. Personal. True. Skylar came by every few weeks. Never with fanfare. She'd help me carry groceries, water the plants, eat pie with a reverence I used to only see in Harold. She asked questions now. About my garden, about her grandfather's woodworking tools, about what it felt like to grow older in a house built on shared dreams. She didn't ask about her father. And I didn't offer. Jenna never called. Mike did once, in April, I think. A clipped message. Something about taxes. I didn't respond. I didn't feel angry. Just removed. Like someone watching a familiar play from the back of a quiet theater. I knew every line by heart, and yet none of it moved me anymore. I rejoined a book club, not for the discussion, but for the tea and the way the light fell through the windows at 2 p.m. on Thursdays. I stopped dyeing my hair. Wore soft, unpatterned clothes. I kept one shelf of things, just one, that held what I considered proof of love, Harold's journal, Skylar's childhood drawings, a pine cone she had painted gold when she was 7. Things that felt earned, not owed. The shelter kept me busy. I helped Cassie find an apartment. Watched another woman, Renee, get her first paycheck from the coffee shop. I crocheted scarves for them in quiet colors, sage, gray, soft blue. They thanked me with hugs and stories and the kind of smiles that don't require loyalty. And through it all, I kept my silence where it mattered. I didn't confront. I didn't explain. The world outside shifted as it always does, seasons changed, newspapers arrived, birthdays came and went. I marked mine alone this time. Lit a candle, made my own toast. I didn't feel sorry. I felt full. Rebecca wrote once. A short note, folded in an envelope with no return address. Grandma, I heard. I'm sorry. I hope you're doing okay. I placed it between the pages of Harold's journal. Not because it healed anything, but because it belonged to the record of who I was and how I was seen. The mailbox stayed mostly empty after that. But inside the house, life settled into something like music. Soft, consistent, without crescendo. I sang to myself while folding sheets. Hummed while sweeping the porch. Read recipes without needing to cook them. I stopped performing love. And started practicing it, for myself. There was nothing dramatic. No revelations or bold departures. Just a woman choosing, quietly, not to be erased. Not to beg for a seat at a table she had once built with her own hands. Skylar began to leave little things behind after her visits: books, hand lotion, a scarf. Each one felt like a tentative stake in something real, something hopeful. I didn't comment on them. But I folded them neatly. Gave them space on my shelves. It wasn't reconciliation. Not exactly. But it was a rhythm. And that, in the end, was enough. The last frost came early that spring. I noticed it not by the air, but by the soil, softer, finally, beneath my fingernails as I planted the first batch of marigolds. Harold used to mark frost dates on the calendar in blue pen. I use memory now. That morning, I found Skylar's scarf on the coat hook again. She hadn't taken it the last time she visited. It still smelled faintly of rosemary and mint. I didn't text her. I just folded it and laid it gently on the guest bed. The vase of dried flowers from my last birthday sat by the window, petals curled inward but still holding color. I thought about throwing them out. I didn't. By evening, the sky dimmed early, clouds settling low and slow. I lit the small candle I keep near the sink, not for mood, just for company. I brewed tea with jasmine, no sugar. The way I like it. I watered the plant on the windowsill, wiped the dust from the bookshelf, took out the trash, and straightened a frame on the mantel. It's a photo of Harold and me on our porch, 30 years ago. We're laughing at something, what, I don't remember. But we look like people who trusted the world would stay kind. I made toast for dinner. Buttery. Crisp. Enough. Outside, the street lamp flickered on. I sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in the old knitted shawl I once wore to Skylar's first recital. There was no music. No phone calls. Just quiet. And that quiet was not absence. It was completion. Not everyone gets a neat ending. Not every fracture is mended. Some things stay broken. But even broken, they can rest. They can be placed gently on the shelf, dusted once in a while, and left in peace. I didn't win. I didn't lose. I chose. To exist without proving. To love without depletion. To be seen, at least by myself, as whole. When I blew out the candle, its smoke rose softly, twisting in the dim light. I watched it curl, then disappear. And then I went to bed,